We are going to start with the candidate forum. As we talked before, I'm going to introduce Jessica Little here, and we're going to do 3 minutes intro, 2 minutes per question answer, and a 3-minute outro. I appreciate your decorum and the niceties of your questions, which I've read, and they are really well written, and I think they're very important. So I'd like to introduce Jessica Little. She has lived in Brown County for 25 years, and 2 years ago she moved into Goshen Township. So I'm going to let her explain a little bit about herself and introduce herself.
Okay,
Jessica.
thank you. Mm-hmm. My pleasure to be here. I appreciate the invitation to for me to get to know you, you to get to know me. My name's Jessica Little. I have been married 37 years to my husband, David. We have 2 grown daughters, Darcy and Dana. And I have 2 very fine and wonderful son-in-laws, Chris and Logan. And my husband, he works from home. He's a software engineer. I work currently as a magistrate in Brown County Municipal Court, and I'll come back to that in a little bit and talk about what I do in that capacity. Let's see, now my husband and I both graduated from Williamsburg High School. We're high school sweethearts. We've been together since we were 16 years old. Both of my daughters also graduated from Williamsburg High School, K through 12. So the 4 of us are Williamsburg alumni. I went to Miami University. I got a degree in accountancy, Bachelor of Science in Business Administration. I went to Northern Kentucky Chase College of Law to get my law degree. I graduated with honors, magna cum laude, and I was in the top 10% of my law school class. Now, a little bit on my work history, picking it up from when I became an attorney, because I didn't become an attorney right away out of school. I was an older student going to law school, and which was quite a different perspective, you know, when you're in law school and you're, you know, 15, maybe 20 years older than some of the people there, and it's like, you know, I had to get 3 other people ready today before I got to class and you're late. How does that happen? But just a different perspective when you're older. After I graduated, I worked as an assistant prosecuting attorney in Adams County for David Kelly. I did that for a couple years, and then I did private practice for about 3 years. And in the private practice, I did, you know, all your typical type of things, civil litigation, criminal defense, wills, and just a whole divorce, just a whole, you know, a whole bunch of stuff. You do everything in private practice. And I was a generalist, so I took a lot of cases. At one point, I decided I was going to run for a prosecuting attorney in Brown County. And I did win the first time I ran, and it was quite a bit of responsibility, but I loved the job, and I ran for a 2nd term, and I was elected again, and I won every single precinct when I ran the 2nd time, so I was quite proud of that. I decided not to run for a 3rd term because I was maybe interested in moving up into the judicial position, and I took a position for Judge Worley in the municipal court. And I have been there since 2017. And it is a job that I love. And the municipal court in Brown County is the same court that I'm seeking the position for here, the vacancy. It has the same jurisdiction, it's the same, handles the same cases. So it's basically that court, but in a different county. And there's one judge and myself, and we do everything. And when the judge isn't there, I do both dockets. So I will handle and typically I handle the civil end of it, but I do a lot of the criminal stuff as well. And when the judge is gone on vacation, I cover everything. So I have done pretty much everything in municipal court that the judge has done, except for magistrates. They can't sign search warrants, and I haven't done a jury trial as a magistrate. I've done plenty of court trials, motion hearings, preliminary hearings, evictions, small claims, everything that comes into municipal court, I have to be able to handle. So the jurisdiction and everything is exactly the same as in the position I'm seeking. Now, in terms of when I was a prosecutor, that's kind of a different story because I was ultimately in charge of everything. You know, my name was on the door. You know, I had, you know, several assistant prosecuting attorneys and some staff, and, you know, I was, like I said, I'm responsible for everything. So you can't, there's nowhere to go if something goes wrong. And I'm not saying, you know, I'm a perfect person, but, you know, I always clean up my messes. If it's something that I need to fix or take care of or do, I do it. I take responsibility for the people that work underneath of me because it's, you know, as I said, my name's on the door. And this is a position of responsibility that I'm seeking. And I feel like I am, with my experience in a municipal court, that I have a lot of the experience with the actual nuts and bolts of running it. Now, again, it's not the same county, so everyone's kind of got their, you know, a little bit, things are a little bit different in how they operate, but it's basically the same court, the same, supposed to be the same structure. Mm-hmm. Although here in Claremont there are three municipal court judges, mm-hmm. are supposed to be, and a couple magistrates. So that's,
it sounds like you worked your way up from the very bottom all the way to where you're at now. Did you mention what school you graduated from?
Williamsburg.
Williamsburg? Okay. So firstly, why did you want to serve as a judge in Claremont County?
Well, I'm already doing a lot of the work that judges typically do, and I can explain a little bit about what magistrates do here in a minute, but okay. I'm ready for the responsibility. I had a lot of responsibility as a prosecuting attorney, and I'm ready to step up and do what needs to be done here. And I think I can do that pretty easily, you know, with having the experience of actually in that court. I'm not learning typically, you know, what do we do on a motion to suppress, or how do we handle an eviction hearing? Because, you know, I can step into that role and pretty much be able to hit the ground running.
Okay. What challenges have you identified currently with our court, and what would you do differently?
Well, you don't really know until you get up in there and find out, you know, what you're doing. I can only speak in a general sense of, you know, when you're on the bench, is you're expected, generally speaking, to follow the ethics rules. The Supreme Court, we have disciplinary rules, we have rules of judicial conduct. You have to follow those rules. You have to be fair and impartial. That's a really big thing, you know, fair and impartial. I think I've demonstrated that I can be fair and impartial in the 7 years that I've been a magistrate. I haven't had any of my decisions overturned that have been went up to the appeals court, so I'm kind of proud of that. Hopefully, I should be knocking on wood that, you know, I say that and then something will get reversed. But I feel that I can be fair, that I am fair and impartial, and I can follow that. I can do that. But I think is trying to be as transparent as possible in what you can, especially in the administrative aspects of a job. I think that's important, that the public don't, you know, they don't feel like there's a curtain up in what's happening. You know, they want to know what's happening. You know, I believe in being transparent. I've released everything people have asked me for. If you want to know it, I'll tell it. You want to see my questionnaires, fine. I'm happy to provide all of that. I want you to learn everything about me, because I want you to be comfortable in, you know, in what your thoughts are, and if you're going to, you know, if you're going to make a recommendation or not.
Okay, great. Since we're the Central Committee, have you ever served on a Central Committee?
I did several years ago in Brown County. I think it was 2004 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 or something. I looked it up. It's on my questionnaire. I was a couple years on the Central Committee. I was active in club a lot. We had club as well, and I did like many years ago, like in the late 90s, I did like the newsletter and things like that. So.
Great. What connections, if any, do you have with elected officials in Clermont County?
I don't have any connection with elected officials in Clermont County, but I do have some relatives that do work for the county.
Okay. Do you have any political connections with the people in Clermont?
I hardly know anyone.
Okay.
I know a few people, but I would probably say I'm unconnected.
Okay. Do you have any concerns that your appointment process will be fair and open? And if so, why?
I don't know if I have any concerns. I feel like if anybody wants to know any information about me, I'm happy to share it. You can email me. I'll give you a response. If you want to call me, that's fine too. As long as I have an opportunity to present my case to everyone and they have an opportunity to hear, I feel I can make my case.
Okay. What is your Clermont County history?
Okay, now let's see. When I was born, my parents lived in Loveland, and my oldest brother and well, I only have one brother. So my brother and my oldest sister graduated from Loveland, but we moved a lot when I was younger. And so I went to kindergarten or first grade in Loveland. Then we moved like to Adams County. Ultimately, we moved to Bootjack Road in Clermont County. That's when I graduated from Williamsburg. I moved there like in the 5th grade till graduation from college in '86. So like from 75 until '86, pretty much, I lived in Williamsburg in Clermont County. So if you add that to the 2 years that I've lived here now, that's 12 plus years. So I feel like I've got some ties here. Plus, when I lived in Brown County, our property was actually on the border of Clermont and Brown, and our backyard was in Clermont, and we paid taxes 25 years to Clermont County.
Okay.
Although being a resident where the house was in Brown.
So here's an easy one. Who is your favorite current Ohio Supreme Court justice and why?
I don't know if I should answer that, because if I get up in front of the Supreme Court again,
So I said it'd be easy.
I'm going to dodge that one.
That's fine.
Duck, dodge.
How would you describe your role and responsibility as a judge in society, and what are some of the ethical and moral dilemmas you face in your position?
Oh, wow. So sometimes you do come across ethical issues, because for example, you may have people that come in front of you that so you have to recuse yourself. But you can't always, recuse yourself from every single person that you know. The test is, can you be fair and impartial? And if you do know someone even slightly, you have to be able to you have to disclose that to everybody. So you have to be transparent in what you're doing on the bench. Especially, it's not as big of an issue in a bigger county because fewer people, but that does come up, and I'm often recusing myself from situations.
Okay. If judges become aware of a credible allegation of behavior issues of other judges that could act to compromise the standing of the court, do you believe there's a duty to inform the Supreme Court of a potential issue?
Actually, there is a direct evidence rule, a direct disciplinary rule that if you're an attorney or an officer, a judicial officer, if you see an ethics violation, you have to report it to the disciplinary council. So you're under a duty to do that. So I'm not saying, I don't know anything about any particular circumstances, but generally, as a general rule, attorneys and officers of the court have a duty under the ethics rules to report ethics violations.
Thank you for that. How do you deal with your own personal views getting in the way when having to make a judgment that you don't agree with, yet is correct in the eyes of the law?
I don't have a problem with that because that's the exact job. You have to be able to be fair and impartial. What you personally believe does not matter and it doesn't play into it. You have to follow what the law is, what the case law is above you. You have to follow it. So I feel that's not that hard to do, to break yourself off from, what your desires are, or how you think on something, because you have the law and then you have the facts. The hardest part is figuring out what the facts are, not the law.
Right.
Because the law is written down somewhere. You can refer to it. It's the factual findings that make the job hard.
This question is going to be a little more difficult to answer because we're talking about what would be the first steps you will take to organize the municipal court in the state that it's in? If you know of anything. I know before you said you didn't really know of it too much.
Well, you don't know until you actually get up there and see what the job is. And again, I don't know any of the circumstances except what I've read in the paper, but I do know that I think it's important to be transparent and let the public know what you're able to let the public know, because the court has an administrative side, which is just your day-to-day operations. Most of that should be out there. If someone wants to know what's going on, that should be matters of public concern. As I'm saying, as I say that, we have to follow, what the rules are and what the rules of superintendents of the court. We follow those, but as much as possible, I believe in transparency, and to take that with me wherever I go.
Do you believe in sin and that at least some people go to HELL hockey sticks?
Do I believe in hell, basically?
Yes.
Yeah, I think there's a heaven and I think there's a hell.
Okay. How does your answer affect the role of justice?
Well, justice is, I don't want to say man-made, but it's the law that man creates. Whether you go to heaven or hell, that comes from, the Holy Scripture. So they're two different things. Now, some people say, oh, they're based on each other. Well, we all have certain values, Judeo-Christian values that we live by. And I think that the framers had values that are derived, that they are based their documents and founding the Bill of Rights and the Constitution on. But, there's basically just the man-made law, and then we have the Holy Scriptures. They're separate.
Okay. Thank you. In about 6 months, our municipal court will consist of 2 new judges and a relatively new judge, Anita Beckman. Does that scare you?
No, that doesn't scare me, but I think it's something that the people making the recommendation need to consider, because if you appoint 2 relatively new judges in a short amount of time, you're going to have a lot more, you really need to put someone on there with more experience, because if you have someone that's not a lot of experience, but, working there, 2 new people, I would suggest you put someone on there that has a little more experience actually running the court, doing the job. And I think I think I have the experience to do that.
Have you run for any offices but lost?
Yes, I ran for municipal court judge, not this last term, but back in, was it 2017? And it was a 3-way race because it's nonpartisan. So it's anybody wants circulated petition, well, not anybody, but if you
Right.
qualify, circulated petition, you can get on the ballot. So there were 3 of us. There was a Democrat and 2 Republicans, and I got the most votes of the Republican candidates, so.
But you lost out, unfortunately. If you don't win, I'm going to combine 2 questions here. If you don't win, will you run for Judge Nagel's position or prosecutor?
I don't know. I don't know what the future holds. I mean, we didn't know about this position, until recently. And then I decided, I was ready for the responsibility to step up to it. But I'm not promising to run for anything an additional besides this position. I mean, because I'm expecting that to have to run next year, correct?
Yeah, I think so. Right, Chris?
So
I think you have to run the next election, yes.
I'm thinking it's next year.
Yeah, the next election after, yeah.
So
2026.
2026?
So I'm not thinking beyond that. It's, I don't know what the future would bring, but it's kind of unlikely.
Gotcha.
Just to clarify from what I heard, is that it's screwball when somebody gets appointed because it can throw the cycles off post on the office because you have to run in the next available election after a certain amount of time.
Right.
So it could be probably November 2025 or something like that. Could be
I'm not certain, but that's what I was thinking it would be, because his term.
Well, that's all the written questions I have, and you said you would agree to take some questions from our committee.
Sure.
Is that still okay? Anybody got any questions? Yes, go ahead.
Can you please explain the lawsuit that you had against you in Brown County?
Yes, I had I actually prosecuted this person before in common pleas court, and he turned around later and sued me for defamation of character, that I said some things about him. So he ultimately dismissed his suit.
Are you talking about this? I don't think we're talking about the same one. Are you talking about the one there were 5 people involved? The ODOW?
Oh, that was, I had 5 people, they were indicted. So they weren't suing, that wasn't a lawsuit against me, I don't think. It was,
It said $2 million ODOW suit includes complaint against prosecutor. Can you give us a little bit more about that?
that was, I guess, I don't remember that. They sued me?
Complaint of you.
Oh, okay, well.
It was against the Department of Wildlife officers, and then they turned around and sued you.
Can we simplify this and say what?
I can't.
The ODNR.
Oh.
Okay, what was the?
Well,
yeah.
I don't remember having them, I can't remember that suit against me. I can remember that they were sued for, I indicted 5 people on that.
Yes.
Maybe.
For what?
5.
Yeah, for
Yes, that's something that I did.
Okay, why did you indict them?
Well, we had an Inspector General's report, and it laid out some of the allegations against them, and a lot of it was their own statements. And so we did indict these people from there, and it stems from another wildlife officer. So it's kind of a convoluted case, but ultimately what happened is I could not use their statements against them. There was a Garrity issue, and which was kind of novel, that when the Inspector General interviewed these people, they weren't read Garrity. And I don't know if you know what Garrity is, but Garrity is kind of like a Miranda warning that you give public employees, and that was not done. And ultimately, because they weren't read Garrity, I could not use their own statements against them in their prosecution. So I ended up dismissing the case against them because I couldn't use their statements. and I felt that the cases weren't strong enough to pursue. So I ended up dismissing those cases.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Becker?
And you said you were older than the other students in law school. So I'm curious, how were you when you started law school, and what prompted you to want to go to law school to begin with?
I think I was like 40 or late 30s. Late 30s.
Where'd you go?
Northern Kentucky University. And I graduated in 2003.
So what prompted you to want to go to law school when you were late 30s? 40?
Well, there's a couple reasons, but one was I actually sat on a jury, and I was watching the attorneys, and I thought, I can do that. And I decided I was going to law school like as a midlife crisis, and my husband thought I was insane. So I took the LSTAT and filled out my application and got admitted.
That's a good answer.
There you go. Chris?
I didn't have a question, but I never heard of the Garrity warning thing since you brought it up. And because it comes up, because people here would know Allison Kersker was not given a Garrity warning.
That's right.
Okay, so anything she's made as statements, you know, when being interviewed, leaving the court and so forth, when she was fired, can't be used against her because they didn't kind of Mirandize her. It's called a Garrity warning, that you have to tell the person that things you say to me now could be used against me, basically. And if you don't do it with a public employee, then you can't use their statements against them, even if they admitted the whole kind of horrible thing.
Well, that went up to the Supreme Court. It went all the way up, because I won in the 12th District and got shot down in the Supreme Court on that. That said that they had to have the Garrity warning. The Inspector General had to do that. Now, the Inspector General, I don't know if you're familiar with that office. It's a state agency, and they're kind of like a, you know, they watch, they're like the watchdog of how things are being run. If things, you know, if there's ethics complaints or things like that, they go in and do an investigation. But they did not do that Garrity warning, and that was kind of a novel issue. That's why it went all the way up to the Supreme Court. And I guess Inspector General now has to give Garrity warnings.
Any other questions?
Can I have another one? I'm sorry.
Sure, go ahead.
Do you know Anita Beckman?
Who?
Anita Beckman, your other judge in the municipal court. Are you familiar with her?
I'm familiar with her. I've met her a couple times, but I don't know her well at all.
Okay. Well, we're going to conclude and let you finish up with your last 3 minutes.
Well,
however you feel fit.
No, please make it 30 minutes.
Yeah, 30 minutes. Yeah.
You know, it's hard making a decision about somebody if you don't know them very well, you know, but I'm not connected in this county politically. I don't engage in partisan politics because I've been on the bench, and as a magistrate, you're bound by the same judicial ethics rules that judges are. Now, magistrates do the same kind of work judges do. They're non-elected judicial officers. They're appointed by the judge. They do handle cases, motions, like I said, trials. But magistrates' decisions don't become effective unless they're approved by the judge. Magistrates also help judges do research, writing, you know, draft decisions. They help them all with that kind of thing. But my working as a magistrate, I think, has given me the experience to be able to move up into this role with more responsibility. So
is that it?
Well,
sounds good.
Well, I was going to say, I make decisions about people I don't know all the time. You know, they come in front of me, I don't know, you know, anyone, all I want to know is tell me the facts. I want to hear all the facts. I consider what's relevant. I give weight to what's important, and then make a decision. You know, you got to make a decision, and I'm asking you to basically, you know, do the same thing. Give weight to what's important, consider what's relevant. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everybody. This concludes the candidate forum.